Good morning, everyone. So we are in the happiest place on earth, as I've been told. I like to think of these conferences as happy places for us, actually. I think that it's really important that because we are paid to be creative every single day, no matter whether you're a coder or a designer, we are paid to be creative when we turn up to work in the morning. And I think that conferences like this are a time to fill up that metaphorical creativity cup, so to speak. So it's lovely when you have that energy of learning new things and learning the quick wins where you're really eager to get back to work and implement these small bits and pieces that you're going to learn over the next couple of days. So it really is a pleasure to speak for you all this morning. So as Jeffrey just said, at the moment I am one of the Adobe insiders. It's part of a small team of people across the world. We are given a part of the creative suite to evangelize for the year, and XD is what I'm currently working on. And we recently had a meeting in New York at the headquarters, and it was one of the meetings that, as a British person, we don't do something very well, which is sit round a table and introduce yourself. British people are kind of a bit more reserved, and I felt like I was getting really nervous as all the insiders stood up and talked about these amazing projects that they'd been part of, but they led with what their job titles were. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm a photographer. Hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm a designer. And I was thinking, I know what I'm going to say, but I don't know what my job title is anymore. Maybe I'll say I'm an art director, and then realize that I absolutely hate that title because it just seems a bit above my station sort of thing. Maybe I'm a UI UX designer, but I feel like I do so much more nowadays. I'm definitely a web designer of some kind. Maybe I should just go with the word designer. But really what I am is this title, social media expert. But I hate that title. And the reason I know that I'm not a social media expert is words like reach and clout kind of make me all feel a bit nauseous. I also think that the term social media expert is a strange one, because I don't think that anyone in this room would call themselves an expert of the web. We know that we are constantly learning. There's always new things for us to add to our toolkit. I feel like social media expert does not fit. I feel like we are actually experts. You are the coders, you are the people who helped build the internet and make the internet a better place every single day. You're also the expert of your respective businesses. You know where the customers are, you know where they're spending the most amount of time. So this is the one title that I absolutely refuse to take, and I find it quite brazen, to be honest. And it's mainly because it's self-appointed by people like this. Now, let's call this guy Bob. I'm not hating on Bob here. I'm hating on the fact that Bob calls himself a social media expert. And he gets that title by following 50,000 people to get back 57,800 people. Fake it till you make it, Bob. I feel like we had to work really hard to get our titles, and the title of web designer nowadays encompasses so much throughout the years. Our learning has never, ever slowed down. And it angers me that people who have never been in our industry call themselves social media experts, when many of us, loads of us who have been working in the web a long time, would never dream of telling anyone that we were experts at anything. A more fitting job title for some of the work that I do nowadays would probably be social media designer, but that's not really a thing either. And ironically, the term webmaster from the .com era is probably more fitting today than it was back then. I certainly prefer it to ninjas and full-stack developers. Full-stack developers always makes me think of pancakes. Anyone else? Who remembers when we had a very limited color palette and the colors actually had names on the web? Anyone old enough, been in here for a long time? Wasn't that simpler, more wonderful times than we have nowadays? But they were kind of insistent on burning your retinas as well. I don't know why we had to have such insipid colors. So there is kind of a defeatist attitude to social media at the moment. And we have this attitude of thinking that everything has already been done, that there's no point in starting. We're looking at some of the accounts where they have 20, 30, 40, thousands and thousands of followers. And we have a tendency to think, I'm already behind. I'm not going to start because that company's already got all the followers. We're not going to make any sort of impact by starting now. I think it's really important for us to take a step back and remember where we are in this industry at the moment. We're still in the first 10,000 days of the web. And if you want to break that down to how long social media has actually been a thing, it's just 3,000 days. Social media as we know it is just getting started. And I feel like there's exciting times ahead. 33% of jobs don't exist right now that will in 2020. And we have a tendency right now to think of social media as a collective of apps and services that need to be used together to get maximum benefit. There's not enough strategic thinking surrounding why businesses choose one platform over another. Gary Vee says, there is no social media. Social media is a slang term for a collection of apps and websites that now dominate the end consumer's attention in our society. I think that we're stuck in a pattern that we have got stuck in before, something that Jeremy Keith, one of the speakers here at an event apart, has coined before, saying we're a bit stuck in what is known as a consensual hallucination. We were back here many years ago when we all believed that the 960 grid was exactly how we needed to build websites. We're kind of here again with social media. We've got out of the habit of thinking that social media isn't just a bunch of websites, and websites are kind of our thing, aren't they? Let's remember what is actually under the hood of social media. It's not a special, magical type of code. This is our thing. And no matter where you're at in this industry, whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, the fact that you're able to read something on that page really excites me. So we need to bring the whole thing back to being a bit more human. Once upon a time, we had to sell the benefits of being on the web to our clients. Who remembers those good old days when you actually had to go to a meeting to sell the benefits of being online? That sounds crazy now, doesn't it, that we would ever have to actually have meetings to sell the benefits of websites to clients. That was what I remember doing back in 2001, 2002. We're back to those conversations almost all over again. But we need to get into the mindset of asking our clients and asking the businesses that we work for, how can we help you? What can I do for you? Instead of, look at what I've got. Too many businesses right now are fighting for attention. They're putting products in the front and center of every single social media post, rather than asking themselves how they can bring long-term value to their customers through the medium that is social media. They're instead shouting, trying to grab a millisecond of the user's attention instead of playing a long game. And if you're still not convinced that this talk is for you because you make websites, we've already established that social media is a bunch of websites. This is the average time spent on social media every day on any device, 1 hour and 48 minutes, compared to a meager 55% of people who are spending 15 seconds on the types of websites you and I have been building for years. As Jeffrey just said in his talk, this isn't always a bad thing. It can show amazing efficiency in your websites. But for the most part, we have an attention problem on the web right now. So quarterly design reviews are a great idea for many reasons. I'm not talking about changing up branding or typefaces every quarter. I'm talking about strategically designing social campaigns, collecting the data, and reviewing the wins and failures quarterly. So everything I'm going to talk about in this talk should form part of your quarterly design review. And the first thing I'd like to start with is Vanity Metrics. So the first thing I'd like you to do when you go back to the businesses and the places that you work at on Thursday is sit down and figure out where the businesses are chasing vanity metrics. We've all been part of the conversations, probably many of us have sat in boardrooms tearing our hair out, where all the bosses and managers are interested in is getting the follower count up, get ways to increase the number of followers instead of increasing conversions. Now, we went through this stage once before. Who remembers these? Hit counters. Do we all remember when that was the measure of a successful website? We would proudly display these at the bottom of our GeoCities homepages. and we would say, my website is super successful because I have had 10,000 hits on my website. We were throwing around hit counters and using it as a measure of the website's success. So recently, Google came to town. So where I live is pretty much a small village just outside London. We're about 40 miles outside London. And tech events don't really come to where I live. So when Google came into town, I was really excited. What they were actually coming into town to do wasn't really aimed at me at all, but I was so excited that there was a tech event that I thought, do you know what, I'm going to go along. And it was about social media. So I was actually interested to see how newbies in my town were approaching social media. So I thought, I'll go along. It will be really interesting, and I'll get to speak to some interesting people, and maybe even help some people along the way. So in amongst the crowd, there were a lot of hands going up. They were all newbies to the tech industry. They were all learning things for the first time that you and I would probably do with our eyes shut. But it was really, really interesting. And amongst the crowd, there were three specific industries, three people working in different industries that stuck out to me. There was a guy who sold paisley ties. There was a mortgage broker, and there was a guy who repaired washing machines. And they all had exactly the same question, which was, how do I get my followers up, and how do I become popular and get more likes? Now, when the Google guy was speaking, there was a chap in the corner who I must say was kind of irritating me, because he was one of these people who audibly needed to sort of agree with the speaker as they were speaking, like he knew everything. He was that kind of guy. And when it came to answering the question, he kind of put himself forward with an amount of bravado that I found quite interesting. And I thought, this is the sort of guy who has the title of social media expert, no doubt. So he put himself forward, and they all had the question, how do I get my followers up? How do I become more popular? And he said, what you need to be doing is posting 3 times a day, for starters, to every social network that you're part of. It's not terrible advice per se, but there isn't one-size-fits-all for social media. Let's have a think about that. What would someone who sells paisley ties, a mortgage broker, and a guy who repairs washing machines be posting 3 times a day? And then he said, what you need to do is then go into your competitors' follow and use what us pros call the follow-unfollow method with a bot. At which point, my face looked a bit like this. For me, that is right up there with people who beg for likes and shares on Facebook, only to have their page liked by their family and friends out of loyalty, and then skew their metrics forevermore with non-engagement. So what many of these experts fail to ever uncover is where the client can bring the most value to their customers. Where are the customers hanging out, and how to come up with a deliverable schedule that would make sense for that audience. One of the other questions someone had was, what about this Snapchat thing? Bravado guy put himself forward again, and he said, oh, you don't need to worry about that. It's youngsters. They're just using it to send nudie pictures to one another. And I was like, oh, this guy is killing me. It was a really frustrating afternoon in many ways, but I wasn't their target audience. I especially realized this when the Google guy asked, so what have you all learned from today that you didn't know existed before? And another chap put his hand up and said, the Twitter. And I thought, okay, that's the level that it's at. It was more suited to someone like my dad, who this week rang Amazon to complain about his Google account. So we do need to check our personal bias. What this guy actually had was a personal bias to some social networks. I've had my own personal bias in the past, and my personal bias, I'll be honest, was with LinkedIn. And actually, I realized that it's an exceptional platform for many, many things. And I had to get over that and realize that I definitely had a personal bias that was swaying some of the advice that I was giving to clients. So checking your personal bias and making sure that you're not putting forward social media networks that might make sense for your clients because you personally don't like it. Another quote from Gary Vee: "I'm stunned at the lack of practitionership in this space. People who claim to have strong opinions on one social channel over another, but have yet to execute a single ad on any of these platforms." We have a tendency right now to think of social media and successful social networks as something that is coming. It's already here, and sadly, we, as an industry, maybe because we've been doing other things with mobile-first design and all the other things that we've had to add to our jobs recently, it's already here, and we're sadly already behind. I had to recently, at the beginning of the year, do quite a few job interviews for social media managers, and I was amazed at how many people put themselves forward for the roles. And when I said, "So, what are your skill sets? How have you been implementing ad campaigns online?" And they said, "Oh, well, actually, I haven't done any of that, but I use social media, and I'm good at it," so not realizing that there's a practitionership side to this as much as what we do with web design. So a really good thing to do is look for emerging social networks. So Gary Vee, who I've used as an example a couple of times, back in 2007, he had 100,000 followers on Twitter, and his engagement was through the roof. Look for social networks that are not as clogged in order to gain engaged followings before that market gets saturated. People are so worried about the displayed numbers rather than building engaged followings right now. And you can do that by actually just going into the App Store and looking under the section of social media. You'll find a whole plethora of new places to explore. And personally, I don't think that any of it is ever lost. Some of these networks come and go quite quickly, but the knowledge that you can apply to other social networks, it's all one big pool of knowledge. You're never going to be behind by getting on a network that then actually fails. So perhaps the most confusing platform to outsiders at the moment is Snapchat. It's the one that I hear the most misinformation about. And it is doing really, really well with a certain demographic of people. And that demographic might not be who you think. So there are more videos viewed per day on Snapchat than on Facebook. Snapchat has one of the lowest daily active user rates, and is one of the most least popular social networks, with 9,000 images being shared against Facebook's 4,500. It's a highly engaged network to tap into that many, many people discount in their marketing initiatives. 85% of Snapchat's 158 million daily active users are between the ages of 18 and 34. If you speak to most people, they think that the age range of Snapchat is significantly lower, when actually, I believe over the last couple of months, they're saying some of the most engaged bracket is actually the upper 25 bracket right now. But Snapchat's weakness is the olds. I'm sorry to anyone who is over 35, like me, and is considered the olds. But its non-intuitive interface makes it cool among young people who have enough free time or friends on the network to make the steep learning curve worth their time. The app's novelty, however, is also its paradox, making it super sticky for youth while keeping their parents away. It's funny because Facebook now has the same reputation, doesn't it? They say whenever grandma gets on a social network, the kids leave in droves. For any of you who haven't actually executed any ads on Snapchat, the back-end interface is absolutely beautiful. It's very intuitive, and even if you don't plan on executing anything on there at all, it's worth just going in and having a look, because if you've been bamboozled by the way Facebook works with advertising, this is a really, really simple, beautiful way of learning how this platform works. So 2018, we're now going to be starting to think about campaigns for holiday seasons. It's a great time to reassess what you might be doing in-house and where you're focusing your efforts on social media, and do some webmaster digital housekeeping, so to speak. So some stats to take back to wherever you work or boardroom meetings. By 2019, video will account for 80% of all consumer internet traffic. So if you're not designing campaigns that feature video or planning how to get live video into your marketing efforts, you're missing out on the fastest way to build engagement and really high ROI. So this isn't new. This, one of the biggest things that we can do to improve our clients' organic SEO and rankings is to give our websites a security certificate. But yet many people, many of the places I go in to consult for, still have not made this very simple switch. We already know this one, I probably shouldn't have to point it out at a web conference, but making improvements to load times, making websites mobile ready. So we're the people who make the websites mobile ready, but obviously it's worth looking at the load times and compatibility, as this is not only what makes a better experience for your users, but it also affects your organic SEO. So if there's one badge I would like to own right now, if we were to have, like, I sometimes wish that we had badges like the Scouts, that we were awarded when we learnt different things throughout our web designer journeys. Like, yes, I don't use Bootstrap as a badge, so I'd like that. I'm sorry, I hate Bootstrap. I would like the enamel pin badge of ban the pop-up. Now, I'm pretty sure that actually it's not us in this room who are doing this, but does anyone actually click allow on these things when they come up? I know that I certainly don't, and I don't know anyone else who is using them. But this is a great buzz phrase to take back to the office. Google has started to lower the rank of websites where content is not easily accessible. Full screen takeovers and pop-ups come into that bracket. So if you are in a meeting with someone or a manager who is desperate to put a popover or something that gathers email addresses on the homepage, pull out this stat and let's all take a stand to ban the pop-up, please. We can't seem to get them right, can we? And I say we, as again, I don't believe that it's anyone in this room who voluntarily decides to put these on their sites. These are right up there with image carousels for me. I think that they are a lazy fix to a complex engagement problem that collectively, that is us, we need to find a better way to fix and solve. So I didn't actually have to go digging for these at all. It was practically nearly every website that I went on at the moment had a pop-up of some sort, and now they're getting even more elaborate and trying to send you into different places depending on what it is that you're looking for. What pop-ups also inadvertently do is they alert users to discount codes. Now, this is another problem. You can play along this game if you would like. Type your favorite brand into Google and see how far down that list it pops up saying discount code, coupon code, or something similar. People are leaving websites to go and search for coupon codes. Now, personally, I think that when we're using pop-ups and we're saying, hey, in order for you to get 15% discount, all we need is your email address. Even if someone clicks off of that pop-up, we have inadvertently told them that there are discount codes floating about. So when it comes to checking out, they're going to hover on that buy button because they're thinking, I know that you were going to give me 15% off, so I'm now going to go searching for where another coupon code might live. And it is an epidemic problem that we actually do need to sit down and think about how to solve. There's a company in England called Bloom and Wild, and I think that they have solved this quite neatly, to be honest. What they have done is they have said, okay, we know that people disappear off of our website to try and find coupon codes. What we actually would like to do is keep them on the site. So what we're going to do is when someone uses a coupon code that is invalid, we are going to put a valid coupon code at the top. It might not be as much as they were going off to search for. We're going to give them 10%. Someone might know that there's a 15% or a 20%. But the ease of a coupon code popping up at the top, instead of sending the user off to try and find one, most people take it and they pop it in and they're satisfied with that interaction. In many ways, for traffic, for less friction, a better user experience, lower remarketing costs, and higher conversions, we would all be better by being open and creating this page of our websites to stop people heading off to search. Since they're going to type your name plus discount code, coupon code into Google anyway and find what they want anyway, it's not a true measure of where your marketing efforts are working. It's a measure of how good coupon holders' Googling skills are. So the power of remarketing, it's really important that we get our heads around this. Jeffrey touched on this morning, and I believe that it's going to be a really big part of our jobs going forward. It's why there is an entire audience dedicated to remarketing on Facebook, which is called the lookalike audience. And I think the one thing that is really hard in our jobs to predict, that actually we haven't managed to solve yet because it's a really complex problem, is when a user enters our website, where are they in the buying cycle? Are they ready to purchase? Are they just browsing? Are they looking, but they're easily convertible to an impulse buy? Have they got loads of disposable income, or are they waiting for their next paycheck to purchase? It is impossible for us to tell, but what we do know is that the cost of remarketing to that person is high. So if we can convert them early, that customer costs significantly less to acquire. So companies are trying to put in all kinds of things in place, some of which even cost them money, in order to acquire you earlier in the buying cycle than you were perhaps ready to do. So there's a couple of examples of this. It's almost easier to show examples than to explain it. Jeffrey spoke about it this morning, designing for long-tail conversions. For considered purchases, designers are trying to find a way to increase conversions by getting users to make a really small commitment. Obviously, deposits are not a new thing at all, but us as web designers now having to think about how we can secure considered purchases quickly with a longer road to completion of the cost, that is quite a new thing for us to have to think about. Now, this is the Virgin Holidays website back at home, and what they're saying is this is the cost of the holiday. However, we know that that's a large amount, but in order to acquire you as a customer today, we're just going to ask you for a fraction of that to secure your holiday. They know that most people can get hold of that amount, whether they put it on a credit card, whether they borrow it from someone. The problem then becomes our problem as to how to get that customer to complete the entire journey. And this is really interesting because, of course, the back end has to be intuitive, really easy for someone to know where they are in the payment cycle. They've got this pretty much spot on. And this is something I'm seeing again and again and again in web design at the moment, especially with very large purchases. I know Jeffrey was talking about a jewelry store. Anything where a customer is spending a lot of money on a website, we're going to have to start thinking about how we secure them quickly so that we're not having the cost of remarketing, and then designing a much broader experience for them so that they can complete the purchase later. They also know that if they can just get products into your hands, this doesn't just apply to large value items. Some of the clothing stores back at home are starting to realize that if they can get the items into your home, into your hands, the chances are you're going to end up keeping more than you perhaps thought you might. So they are putting systems in place. This is called Klarna. You can buy whatever you want, and then basically it only charges you when you keep the items at the end. So I think that this is going to be something that us as web designers are going to have to start thinking about, conversion, a long-tail conversion. Okay, let's talk some social network specifics and bring you up to speed on what is new and what you can implement right now. We're not going to talk about every social network, just the big players and just the people who have new things going on. So if you haven't already installed a Facebook pixel to your site, make this amongst one of the first things that you do. Yes, I know Facebook's evil. Yes, I know Facebook data gathers and everything else. But in terms of actually what it could do for your company, not just if you're running Facebook ads, there's some really interesting data that can be gathered from a Facebook pixel. Marketers who use video grow revenue 49% faster than non-video users. It comes back to the stat that we learned earlier about how much video is gaining traction on social media. So I have a store back home. I had a mad moment in 2013 where I bought a building and I didn't know what to do with it, and I ended up putting a hair salon in there, and it's become basically my playground for UI UX projects. But it's great because it means that when I come to places like this, I can share real data with you. It's not skewed, it's not obscured, it's real data to do with the salon that I don't mind sharing with you guys. So you can see the incredibly low CPM rate on each of these videos. CPM is one of those marketing words that managers love to use. If you're not familiar with the term CPM, it just means cost per 1,000 eyeballs. That's the way I always think of it. So you can see the incredibly low CPM rate on each of the videos, just a few cents. If you compare this to the cost of the images that are running on a similar campaign, it's significantly higher on image-led posts. Now, I know that you can download the slide deck for this, so this might be one for you to actually pull down on the PDF and compare the two side by side, because there's a lot of data on both of those slides. But you'll see that there is a much, much higher cost associated with images than there are with videos. So they say that organic Facebook engagement is highest on posts with video, which is 13.9%, and photos at 13.7%. Now, personally, I have found the engagement on photos to be considerably lower than the stats seen there. Over half the video content is viewed on mobile. 85% of videos on Facebook are actually watched without sound. So if you haven't worked out a way to get the subtitles working, it really, really makes a difference to get someone in your team to get the subtitles onto Facebook as well. I use something called SRT Edit Pro. It's available in the Mac App Store. There's lots of other alternatives available for a PC as well. If someone is not doing this for your videos, they are absolutely missing a trick, because it's not just for accessibility issues, it's for people who are sitting on trains and don't want the sound on. You are much better to actually put the subtitles on a video, irrespective of what you're trying to achieve. And this is one of the few solid examples that we know to consistently perform well under the new Facebook algorithm. So Facebook Live videos, 6 times the engagement of regular videos right now. And if you haven't actually gone into Facebook, irrespective of whether you are running Facebook ad campaigns, there is this tool called the Facebook Audience Insights, which is free to use, and it can give you an incredible amount of data about your users. It can pull all sorts of different things in. It can say, okay, this is the industry that you're in. People who like this thing also like this that you might not have realized. For example, this is what web designers in the United States all have in common with one another. Now, my very favorite is hidden right at the bottom under the wine and spirits section. It's listed as Patron Tequila. Apparently that's what all web designers have in common with one another. And I like to think that we frantically got there by trying to learn Vue, React, and Angular. That's how I think that we got to drinking lots of tequila, personally. So Mark Zuckerberg has said you'll see less public content like posts from businesses, brands, and media, and the public content that you see will be held to the same standard. It should encourage meaningful interactions between people. That means that engagement bait is recognized and demoted. So if your boss or manager is saying to you, let's just put out a post that says, what's your favorite Starbucks coffee? And you have nothing to do with coffee and it's just an engagement bait, hardly anyone is going to see it. They're going to demote that content. And the thing I hear a lot is that Facebook advertising simply isn't working for any given company. And it is not that Facebook advertising doesn't work. It's not that your customers are not on Facebook. If it's not working for you, you've not found the right images, you've not created the right descriptions, captions, or you're not targeting the right demographics. It is certainly not that your customers are not on Facebook. An update to Facebook for Business means that it's easier than ever to run multiple creative under the same campaign. I'm always really surprised at how many people don't run multiple ads testing copy and different imagery under the same campaign. It costs the same amount of money. The Facebook algorithm actually chooses the one that's getting the most engagement and demotes the ones that aren't, and it costs no additional money to run them at the same time. It simply just serves the ads that are have a lot higher engagement. Moving on to Google AdWords, I personally am using this less and less because the cost for conversion is significantly higher than any other network that I can run ad campaigns on right now. But this was a metric that I discovered hiding in an AdWords account. Now, this is a little trick that I would like to share with you, because I don't know about you guys, but social media experts and SEO experts are kind of one and the same thing for me. They sit in the same pool of most hated job titles. So recently, I went into one of my clients' AdWords campaigns, and I was looking at some of the metrics. And on the surface, a lot of metrics in Google Ads can seem really quite impressive. Conversions are generally turned off, however. So what you can do is turn on conversions, and then you get a much truer picture of what is actually happening in any given AdWords account. So this little stat that you're seeing on the screen was hidden in one of my clients' AdWords accounts, and they thought that it was actually running okay. They were quite happy with the stats that it was throwing. What this actually showed was that they had paid £372.39, which is what, $450 odd with the exchange rate the way it is right now? $450 for 3 people to fill in an inquiry form on their website. And they hadn't been shown this stat before. So it's really easy for people to bamboozle you with really great metrics about all sorts of things in Google Ads. However, the minute you turn conversions on, it can be a very, very different story. I once took great delight a couple of months ago with an SEO expert who came into one of the companies that I was working for. He had a significant spend in the account. It was £350,000 across the year. And some of the figures on the surface looked really, really impressive. And I just put my hand up and I said, could you just turn conversions on for me? And this guy, you've never seen someone try and backtrack so much in your life. He blamed bagged cookie tracking and flat out refused to turn it on. So that went really, really well. Display ads are an issue right now. There's a larger problem at play with client display ads. In that particular account where the cost was really high, they hadn't changed the creative in 8 months, and there were only 4 pictures being shown. However, there is a general problem with display ads right now. The moment something works, we kind of ruin it and put it everywhere. Many people don't know that trends.google.com exists, and this is a way of identifying long-tail keywords that can have much lower cost and higher conversion. It's a really fascinating thing to just go on and play with, to be honest. So if you haven't actually looked at it, trends.google.com, have a look at it and see where you can identify keywords that will cost you a lot less to run campaigns on. Just going to skip through Google My Business very quickly. Again, it's something that is not really thought about by many people, but it's one of the first things seen when you Google a company. That's My Business back at home. And we make sure we keep it up to date because we get quite a lot of business off of it, to be honest. You would think that when we post up the individual posts that you can do on Google My Business. Sometimes they're only seen by 220 odd people. However, we get a significant amount of business off it. That's a small store in a very small town in England. For larger businesses, if you're not using Google My Business, you're absolutely missing a trick. The big one, Instagram. How many people are as addicted to Instagram as I am right now? Is it an industry thing or is it just me being, okay, quite a few. So it has 800 million monthly active users. And to put that into perspective, that's double the amount of daily active users of Twitter and 3 times the amount of monthly active users for WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. Now, the algorithm has changed. You've probably heard a lot of people moaning about the fact that the Instagram algorithm has changed, and they're now pushing up to the top people whose content you like, people who you direct message, and people who you search for, because it signals that you're interested in the account but not seeing their content. It also pushes people who you know in real life because it's gathering this data from Facebook. Instagram did their own research into the way that everyone was using Instagram at the time, because a lot of people were using the search functionality. And they realized that people weren't seeing 70% of the content. So they had to do something about it. Social networks changed their algorithms to deal with a problem of success. Now, what this means is that if Instagram wanted to create a better user experience for everyone, to make sure that you saw all the content that you wanted, they would actually have to say, we're going to limit you to maybe 50 people. You can follow 50 people. Or they can make a smart decision with their network and say, I'm going to use an algorithm to predict who you're most interested in so that I don't have to put a limit on how many people you're seeing, but we're just going to gently push the content up higher that we think you're most interested in, because you can't possibly see 400, 500, 600 people's content in chronological order. You're still going to miss something. So when people start complaining about algorithms changing, Facebook's algorithm changing, it's to deal with a problem of success. Too many people on the social network, too hard to search, easier to use an algorithm to push the relevant content up. So the onus is still on you to create compelling content to inspire engagement and rank higher in people's feeds. And hashtags, they're the plumbing of the Instagram ecosystem in general. Now, I use this really cringily named website called Hagtashify, because it's one of my most hated tasks if I'm doing Instagram posts, is to find the relevant hashtags. I don't think that they're there for people to read. It's a bit like how we separate style from markup. They're there for discoverability and should ideally be commented separately to the text that accompanies the post. Engagement is higher, 12.6% higher on posts that have hashtags than those without. And 11 hashtags are apparently optimal for engagement. I think that's kind of high. I normally use 6 or 7, but apparently 11 is where the sweet spot is. You might see people doing this at the moment. They're using Instagram stories to send traffic in a round-robin fashion to try and defeat the algorithm. There's 250 million daily active users on Instagram stories, so because their content isn't naturally being seen in the feed, they are using their Instagram stories to say, hey, I'm just alerting you to the fact there's a new post, and they're then sending the traffic back on themselves there. A lot of people don't realize that this functionality exists in Instagram, and you might want to do this for a variety of reasons. Instagram is an aspirational, inspirational platform. So back home with my salon, we had an incident earlier in the year where there was a lot of snow. We had to put out a topical post to say, there's snow, we're going to be closed for today, along with everyone else who's in this parade of shops. However, the minute the snow had melted, that post had served its purpose and was kind of getting in the way of the feed that had been beautifully curated. So in that instance, it makes the most sense to archive a post. You can use Instagram in that way as well, but many people don't realize that that actually exists. A lot of people ask about screen recording after this presentation, and it's actually in iOS. It's in your control center that you can switch it on really easily and actually just take screen grabs of whatever you want. Something else that I use is something called Planoly, and this is really good for putting together campaigns, and it allows auto-posting on Instagram, but only in the square format right now for some reason. That is an odd caveat. However, it's really great for planning out content. It flags certain days, special calendar dates, and it says, hey, you might not realize that it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so you might want to put together something that highlights this. It's a really, really great platform. It's not very expensive. I think it's about $6 per user per month. But if you're planning big campaigns and Instagram is one of your targeted social networks, it is a really, really great little platform to organize your posts on. Something that I want to breeze through, but important, is influencer marketing, because they're underpriced right now and creating incredible value for brands. Bloggers with excellent engagement levels are actually quite rare. When you look at engagement rates of people, especially this is a blogger called Lydia Elise Millen, she's converting an incredible amount of her 500,000 followers to her stories every day. This then translates for brands, as you can see on the right-hand side. She is one of the top bloggers for beauty and all kinds of other bits, fashion, high fashion, luxury fashion. And she is converting people to actual sales in their droves. And that is what influencers are there for right now. A survey by Nielsen showed that only 33% of people trust advertisements, while 90% of people put their faith in peer recommendations. And the US influencer marketing industry is estimated to grow from 500 million to a $5 to $10 billion industry in 2020. So getting influencers to persuade customers can drastically work in your favor when it's correctly executed. There's also what are called micro-influencers, people who have maybe followings under 35,000, where their engagement is still really, really high. In general, influencers as a whole are grossly underpriced right now, and they're used to creating really high quality content. So if your business, company, whoever you work for is not actually trying to work out how they can harness influencers right now, you should be, because they're not going to get any cheaper than they are right now. And Instagram Stories perfectly services the needs of influencers. Because of the high daily active user rate and because of its natural product placement, these influencers can get product placement really, really easily and very naturally into a story amongst their day. If you want to check out what influencers might work for your industry, you might not be in the makeup or high fashion or anything else. It might be tricky for you to work out who influencers are in your particular industry. I use something called lefty.io. This is a screen grab of Lefty. The big question, how much do influencers cost? The answer is probably not as much as you think. This is the average of people who have roughly 25,000 followers. So the average sponsored post rate is $180 and the engagement rate is 5.3. As you get higher, as you climb into influencers who have 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 followers, the engagement rate actually starts to diminish. That isn't a sign of the influencer not being very good. It's a sign of the Instagram algorithm working correctly, of it's not necessarily pushing that influencer up to the top. So a normal engagement rate of people who have 100, 200, 300,000 followers can sometimes sit around 2.5%, and that is still good. So design once, use everywhere. This mantra should be something that we always think about at the beginning of the year. How can we design these campaigns once and then reuse the content across the year? This is why a lot of people like using influencers, because they will actually gift you a stack of photography, and it's very high quality, it's very well art directed, and you can then use that across maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months worth of campaigns dotted amongst your social campaigns. If you do that with 3 or 4 influencers and they've all gifted you a bunch of photos, you've suddenly got some really compelling visuals to work with. So what can we learn from people doing social media the best? I would like to highlight Away. How many people have heard of Away, just as a show of hands right now? Not too many people. Great. Okay. So I think that Away are doing an incredible job at social media right now. And I love to feature case studies where on the surface, there doesn't seem to be much to it. On the surface, it's a plastic suitcase. That is it. It's a plastic suitcase with a USB charger in it. However, what they've done in terms of marketing, branding, and social media is, to me, nothing short of genius. So best friends Jen Rubio and Steph Corey launched Away in February 2016 and have been featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. They're former Warby Parker and Casper, the mattress. They were both involved in both of those companies. They raised $20 million in Series B funding, and they've sold 100,000 suitcases since founding in February 2016. And the reason I think that they're successful is that the brands that are dominating social media right now are those with the most agile teams who have exceptional storytelling capabilities while they're bringing value to their users. It goes back to the whole thing of bringing it back to something else other than putting a product front and center. And what they have done seems so simple once it's been pointed out. They've been exceptionally brave with their marketing by identifying the one thing that everyone has in common when they're using this case, and that is travel. You can imagine the discussions around a boardroom in some companies. I don't understand how creating multiple travel guides on Pinterest is going to directly increase our sales and conversions. What they're doing is playing the long game. They're bringing value back to the user. It comes back to this whole, how can I help you, over look at what I've got. The best example of look at what I've got from a competitor luggage company is this. This is a description of one of their suitcases. From the smallest case-hardened solid steel machine screw to our exclusive virtually abrasion-proof FXT ballistic nylon fabric. I mean, most people don't even care that much about suitcases, let alone the type of screws that they're made with. This is entirely out of touch with what people are expecting to see on social nowadays. So what Away have done is created compelling creative that is really quirky and fun. They're using stopgap animations that perfectly illustrate the product without it being too engineered. They're working with influencers, again, who are known to create beautiful imagery. This is some influencers imagery where they've gifted them a suitcase and then they have taken loads of beautiful imagery for them. As someone who owns one of these, because I got completely sucked in by the marketing, the funniest thing is seeing the sheer delight on people's faces when you plug your phone into a suitcase at an airport. It is really funny how many people then want to come up and speak to you and ask you where you got your suitcase from. It's just one of those funny things that happens when you're traveling. So around the summer of this year, I know a lot of people were contacted and gifted these suitcases. Celebrities were gifted them. They were not paid to promote. They were simply just gifted the suitcases. And then they're seen walking through airports, getting taken pictures of by the paparazzi, and guess what's on the end of their arm? An Away suitcase. This suitcase probably costs them $80 to produce and gift them, but compared to traditional marketing or how much it would traditionally have cost a celebrity to get a celebrity on board with your brand, they are gifting these things left, right, and center at the moment. So this was their Thanksgiving campaign last year. You can see that the product is not always front and center. It has a very organic, very real feel to it, all while promoting their brand. They're looking at what the people who would buy their product are interested in, and everything hinges around travel. They've looked for the common denominator and given value to the user around the product. They always have something to talk about because they're building a brand around a larger story of travel, but they're also mixing it up every few months with collaborations. So they recently just did, I believe this color is now being called Millennial Pink, of all things. They recently just did a Millennial Pink campaign. They've done some stuff with Minions. They're constantly coming up with new collaborations so that they also have something fresh to talk about. In general, their campaigns are beautiful. They're very simple, and they're very beautiful, and they're very considered and specific. Their offline print marketing in airport trays and physical banners was nothing short of genius. This was at Chicago Airport last year, and it was pretty amazing to see all the luggage bins all branded up with Away, and you think, yeah, that's so simple. Of course, you're connecting with exactly where the travelers are. Such a simple idea, but it was very compelling. They do everything very, very well. And again, if you want to go back to that whole problem about discount codes, they are not without problems on this front as well. Type it into anything, Away luggage promo code. Goes back to the whole thing about putting your discount codes maybe on a website. Anyway, they are highly curated, and they have a large amount of high-quality imagery. If you actually take a look at their tagged Instagram posts, as a brand or as someone who's trying to work with brands to get content constantly through the door, it is amazing the amount of content that they have coming in on a daily basis from influencers, from people who have bought the suitcases and simply want to be shown on the Away Instagram page. The flood of content that is being created by the users is high quality and is constantly coming in. So they've become a real aspirational, inspirational brand. I also wanted to take a look at what they were doing in terms of keyword bidding on Google. Now, you can use this thing called SPYFU, S-P-Y-F-U, and you can check out competitor keyword bidding. So I was interested to know what keywords they were targeting and how they were building that. But at the time, they were mostly bidding against competitor brands. Again, it comes back to interspersing relevant stories. It always means that they have something fresh to talk about. So when you're thinking about what you can do in terms of your businesses, start to think about what is that layer of interest that can sit above your product or service. For Away, it's the generic category of travel. If you can find yours and find your narrative, you've got a really compelling social story that can be told. But again, they have just created a really beautiful end-to-end experience. No matter where the touch point is, you'll find that they have branded it well, it's a great UX, great UI, and the whole thing encompasses travel. They're a great case study to feature someone who's doing social media really, really well. So just to finish up, what I would like to talk about is when things go bad. It's just a little story, a little social media case study for you about when things go bad. And ironically, it is a Disney collaboration. I knew that this kind of might have the potential to go wrong when I was looking at the strategy behind it. And maybe I was a bit mean, but I got myself poised with a cup of tea, plenty of biscuits, and the screen grabber software ready to go on this campaign. So on paper, their social campaigns were ticking absolutely all the boxes. They had designed these beautiful mail shots, teaser shots, and were building excitement for the big day. So I do commend them for trying to think outside the box on this, because what they were doing was actually they were going to let you into a kind of pre-sale that was password protected. So they seeded the Instagram with images days before, and they had these kind of beautiful animated imagery things going on. And then the night before, they sent out a further teaser email, and they were really, really building excitement for the big day. There was a certain buzz around the whole thing. Then in the morning, you got this email that said, your password is star, and it allowed you onto the website. Now, what that then did was threw you into the following experience. Do not refresh your page. You are in a queue. You're in a queue of nearly 20 minutes to wait to get on a website, which to me seems absolutely bonkers nowadays. However, I was ready for it. I wanted to see what was on the other side. So I waited for that 18 minutes, and then this is what I was faced with. Now, we are web designers. If you wanted to buy something on this website, how would one go about it? So I did what any self-respecting web designer would do, and I headed into the dev tools, as I bet that the button was there but hidden somehow, and I thought that I'll unhide it using all my CSS prowess and buy some of these coveted items. But then what started to happen was actually something quite funny, and I went to Twitter, and I started to watch the fallout of what then started to happen. Why can't I buy these items from the website on the early access with Peter Pan? I've managed to get early access, but I have no option to add products to my basket. And it went on and on and on. Why still no add to bag? Why no buy button? Help. Now, this is really interesting, because if you actually look at the language that they're using, these customers think that it's only them that don't have a buy button. They think the problem is with them. And this is a really interesting misconception about users. We always think that our users are super impatient and they're going to just click off the website if something doesn't work immediately. What I've actually found through experience is they're really patient, and they believe that the problem is them, and they start to try and work around and figure out what's going on with their particular computer, browser. They'll switch things off and on again. They're actually really, really patient. So these people all thought that this problem was only them. Anyway, Kath Kidston came back. We're currently fixing this issue. You should be able to buy shortly. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that web team at that point. I can't believe we left the buy button. Oh, quick, quick, quick. So it threw everyone back into this experience. Don't refresh your page. You've got 20 minutes to wait. So I thought, do you know what? The old English expression, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm all in at this point. I'm going to wait that 20 minutes and then see what happens. 20 minutes passed. We're back to this. Yay! Yay, we have an add to bag. We can finally buy products. So I thought, do you know what? I wasn't bothered about this damn sweatshop. I'm going to buy the damn thing now. I am in. So I pressed add to bag, and this happened. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm completely over this. But it just goes to show that your social media can be absolutely spot on, but you need to check that that overall end-to-end experience matches up. Funnily enough, I did try and reach out to the Kath Kidston web team just to see whether anyone could tell me what had gone on. And funnily enough, it was a bit of a tumbleweed moment. No one came back to me, sadly. No one wanted to talk to me about whether it was just a web designer leaving off an add to cart button. So just to wrap up, design once, use everywhere. Design your campaigns for the beginning of the year, shoot the imagery, then use them everywhere. Repurpose the content as much as possible. Ensure the networks that you are strategically pursuing make sense for your business. And find your story for social media longevity. Thank you very, very much. I look forward to seeing you all around.